Hello, everybody. My name is Simon Hill. Hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment, share this video. And today I want to talk a little bit about what I do for a living, how I make my money, the little bit that I have. But I'm an ESL teacher. I'm a professional ESL online teacher. I've been doing this teaching online, I would say, man, since the pandemic started. So in 2020, I started teaching online, and right now I'm filming this, of course, on the 1st of June in 2022. And this is what I've been doing for the past 2 years or so, actually. And before that, I was teaching English in Tunisia starting in 2018. Yeah. So in 2018, I started teaching in person in classrooms. And this is how I, sort of found my place in the world. Now, I'm just going to briefly talk about how I conduct one sort of class because I do many different types of class. I'm going to talk about my favorite type of classes to do, which are my conversational English classes. So I'm going to give you guys some game, some information on how to conduct a productive and healthy conversation English class. Now, a conversation English class, in my opinion, is targeted for students who are in the intermediate level and up, right? And you can get more advanced with the content, the discussion, the questions asked, the assignments done in a conversational English class. So I would say students from B1 and up are the primary targets for a conversation English class. So I use the material from ESLlibrary.com. I got the material from my employer who I work with right now. I primarily work for Latin American students, and I really enjoy working with Latin American students because they're very friendly, very easy to get along with, and also the structure with the companies there is less strict than if you're teaching for, let's say, an Asian company or so. I've taught with companies in Asia, and they're just very, how can I say this, just very regimented, and it doesn't give you a lot of leeway and freedom to interact with your students in a way that I feel like is very productive, and I like to have a lot of fun and converse with my students, right? And by the way, usually when I'm talking to them, I'm not speaking this fast. I'm assuming if you're watching this video, you're a native speaker of English and you're probably an ESL teacher. So anyway, so the material I use is from ESL Library, and they have different topics to discuss with your students, right? This one is about ice cream. This second one is about banning pit bulls. This one is about employee tracking. So there's a variety of topics to talk about. I like the PDF sheets that are formatted like this because it's more linear. As you can see, these sheets are sort of all over the place. I like to start with this section, then vocabulary, then reading, then comprehension. So looking at this one is about ice cream, right? And we can see here that we have warm-up questions. For example, do you like ice cream? If so, what is your favorite flavor? Do you know when people first started to eat ice cream, etc., etc.? And usually I begin my class like this. I read the questions out, the warm-up questions that I have set up here. Then afterwards, I ask the students, do they understand the questions? And then after they say they do understand, or if they don't understand, I clarify. I clarify a question. Let's say a student asks, I don't know what a soda fountain is, teacher. That's when I either go on Google, I pull up a picture of a soda fountain and explain it, or I try to explain it with other words, simpler words, so that they could understand if it's a more complicated question. For example, when do you think the recipe for ice cream originated, right? And let's say a student doesn't know the meaning of the word originated. I'll explain originated means began or start, right? When did it first come, for example? Okay. Then afterwards, I explain the questions. I tell the students, relax. You don't have to know the answer exactly. What you should do is just try the best you can from your own mind to answer as best as you can. Okay. And then I tell the students that I will ask one of them, if I'm teaching a group class, I will ask one of you one of these questions, and then I will create a question from my mind. And then I want you to ask me or another student the same question I asked you. Like, for example, do you know what a soda fountain is? Number 4. And then you also ask another student another question from your mind. So this gives the students the freedom and ability to interact with other students in the group and also to practice asking questions and formulating questions in their mind. And I found this really productive. It stimulates discussion in the group. I would love to actually try this in person. I've only actually used this method online, but it's been very effective. My group classes are, almost always full. I have people constantly coming back, and friendships are created in the group as well. So that's a good thing, right? And as they're speaking or making questions, I make corrections. So if they say, do you know what a soda fountain is? Somebody answers, I correct their answer. They say, soda fountain, place, people drink soda. I would tell them, no, a soda fountain is a place where people drink soda. And then I explain each of those grammatical reasons briefly. I try not to get too deep on the explanations. I just give them the correct sentence, let them repeat, and try to answer as best as they can. Okay? And this is also a time where I encourage students to talk to me. I say, you can ask me questions, talk to me. So I usually do this let every student ask at least one question in the group to somebody, pass it around, and then we move on. All right. So by the way, I always give praise after they answer something. It's like, good job. Good job. I don't do the pandering China stuff like, great job. No, I don't do that stuff. I say, that was great. Good. Great answer. All right. Like respectful, like adults, because mostly I teach adults. I don't teach children generally, though I can, and I have. Let's go to the vocabulary preview. In the vocabulary preview section of these ESL conversation sheets, ESL library conversation sheets, they usually have a list of vocabulary words before you get into the reading. Okay? So the vocabulary is usually sometimes hard, sometimes easy. It's good to have a mix of words that they know already, and also some new words and phrases. That way you're not just overburdening your students with too much information, like information overload. You don't want that, okay? So what I do is I go through the words and explain them first. I don't tell them the definitions, which are here. What I do is explain it. So for example, treat. Treat is a noun, and a treat is a nice thing people give to each other to make them happy, right? Dairy. Dairy is another word for something from cows, moo, not the meat, but the milk. So I will explain each of these words, and then I ask the students, one of the students, if I'm teaching a group class or if I'm teaching an individual, I'll say, can you read A, and then tell me which word it is. So I would say, the student would read A, the creation of something new. That's invention. I would say, yes, good job, correct. Can you go to B? B, a small body of water. Slurping? No, slurping is when you do, I explain the word that they guessed wrong so that it sticks in their mind. Then afterwards, they would say, okay, pond. Ah, yes, good job, pond. All right, and we do that for all of the vocabulary words, 1 through 12 or however many there are. All right, usually at this point after the vocabulary, I give them more praise. Good job. And then I would either play a video related to the content, a short video, nothing more than, let's say, 4 or 5 minutes, related to the content. And then I ask the student, what did you learn from the video? What did you find interesting? Anything you want to say, right? This encourages the student to listen, right? Because they're listening to audio. And also at the same time, this gives them the ability to speak about what they're interested in and what they learned, and you get to learn more about the student, right? Sometimes I ask questions about what they saw in the video, but not all the time. And the video is just to keep it more entertaining, right? And also to give them a break from speaking, because at this point, after A and B, they've been speaking a lot, and people need a break. You can't just work your students so bad. By the way, the class time would usually be for this between like an hour, right? So to complete all of this sheet, it should take about an hour. And the first, I would say 15 to 20 minutes are done on A and B, right? So you're spending 15 to 20 minutes, a quarter of the class time just on this. Now for the reading section, I usually have an audio of a woman reading the text in a perfect, clear, no accent, unaccented American English accent. And if the student is at a lower level of intermediate, I would play the audio of the woman reading this first and then ask them to repeat after I pause the audio. So the audio would read paragraph 1, and then I would play the then I would pause the recording and ask the student to repeat. Okay. And this can be done for each paragraph here roughly in, I would say, 10 minutes or so. So we're setting at like the 25-minute mark. We clarify any questions the student would have about the text after reading this text, right? And then we would go to the comprehension questions. Now, sometimes at this point, after you've done the reading, the student is actually kind of tired of the topic because they've watched a video about it, they read a text about it, it took 10 minutes. After you do the comprehension questions, usually there's a true or false and then an ask and answer section. I usually pick one or the other to talk about, right? So I would pick probably the true or false. So I would say, ancient Greeks and Romans enjoyed frozen treats. Is this true or false? And if you need me to go up to the text, just ask. There's nothing wrong with looking at the text. The point of the class is not to learn the history of ice cream. It's just to practice speaking about a topic, right? So the student would say, yeah, I remember ancient Greeks and Romans ate ice on honey, right? And I would say, no, ancient Greeks and Romans ate honey on ice, right? I would correct that. The focus is not on the answer itself, is to focus on the grammatical mistakes or the pronunciation mistakes, right? So you would go through the questions, true or false. If I'm in a group class, I would ask the students to ask each other these questions. So after I asked the first student, I would say, person A, can you ask someone else in the group question number 2? And that person gets to speak. So the point of a conversation class in a group setting is to get the students to try to interact with each other. If I'm in a solo class with a student, usually I would just ask these questions directly and move on from the comprehension part, right? Okay. Also, another tip before we move from the reading and comprehension part, sometimes in between paragraphs, I'll ask them questions, right? So for example, in this paragraph, it says the history of ice cream goes back to ancient times. Ancient Greeks sold snow cones mixed with honey and fruit at their markets. The Roman Emperor Nero sent slaves to the mountains for snow to combine with honey and nuts. The student would read that paragraph, right? I would say, person A, if you could go back in time, would you want to try the ancient Greek ice cream? And that would be a conversation starter, because the point is not to just go through the text, it's to try to stimulate their mind and give them time to speak freely. And this is when students usually enjoy it the most, because they get the chance to express themselves, right? This is also why I love working with adults, because they really like to talk and express their opinions and stuff like that too. All right, so after we finish the comprehension part, and by the way, these comprehension questions are more open-ended. What is ice cream and how is it made? That's more of a this is a time when you get the student to speak and you can correct their grammar mistakes. So yeah, after the comprehension part, you would go to vocabulary review. And usually on the vocabulary review, you're going to use the words from the first part of the page, right? Remember, we're at about 25 or 30 minutes or so. So we're about 30 minutes into the lesson. And at this part, you're going to use the vocabulary words. And in this case, they're using different words than in the first page, but it doesn't matter, to complete these sentences. So people who lived on a farm used to use to make their own butter. All right, the answer for this one is churn, right? A churn is used to make butter. A student might say, what is a churn? Or often students are too shy to ask when they don't know something. So what I do is just pull it up on Google, type in what is a churn or old school farm churn, show them the picture of it, and then they're like, oh, okay, that's a churn. In our country, in our language, we call this X, right? So that's always good to do. If you get the feeling your students don't know something, just show them. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't have your students in the dark. Try to help the people as much as you can, right? So yeah, we go through the conversation part, vocabulary part, and at that point, we're about, I would say, 40 minutes in or so. So this is when we go to the discussion questions. Now, in the last part, There's usually like a class activity you could do, but most of the time the class activity is something you would have to do physically with people, and online that's just impossible. So what I like to do for the discussion part is pick one of these discussion questions, or more than one. So I would pick, for example, question number 5. What's your comfort food, right? I would say, I would like for you to answer this question. What's your comfort food? And I want you to write your answer. Your answer does not have to be long. It can be short. It can be 1 sentence, 2 sentences, 3. It could be very long. It could be 30 sentences. I don't care. Actually, I do care, because we only, at this point, I have 20 minutes left, right? So I would say, I want you to write your answer, and I want you to try to use 3, sometimes I say 4, vocabulary words that we've learned today in your answer, right? The student would say, okay. The student takes time, and usually at the 40-minute mark, I like to give students 10 to maybe 12 to 15 minutes to write something. Some people take longer to write. Writing is not for everybody, right? So I give them time to write, and they copy and paste their answer that they wrote on their computer into the Zoom box, right? The Zoom chat box, the Skype chat box, the Microsoft Teams chat box, whatever you're using, right? And at this point, I copy and paste it onto my screen using Zoom text. Sometimes I go to the whiteboard. Sometimes I just pull up Notepad and put it there. And I ask the student to read back what they wrote. Okay. The student reads it back. And I always tell them, good job, great job writing. I really, really encourage writing, because writing is important, right? And I tell them, what do you think about your writing? Tell me what you honestly think about it. And most of the time, student says, it's okay. Or I'm not sure if it's okay. Or sometimes they notice a mistake they made. Sometimes the student will say, I wasn't sure about this word. By the way, when I tell them to write, I say explicitly, please don't use Google Translate. Please don't use Grammarly. Try to write from your own mind, right? And when I do that, I get to see exactly how they're constructing sentences. And a lot of the times the mistakes in their writing are grammar, punctuation, and spelling, right? Of course, the 3 things you would expect to see in an ESL writing English class. But either way, I tell them good job after they're done reading, and then I go through the corrections, right, for the writing part. I, switch the words around, take out commas where they don't need to be, add apostrophes, periods, etc., right? At that point, after the corrections and the reading, you should have only about 5 minutes left in the class. And I say then, tell us what you learned today. And then 5 minutes is just like, the last 5 minutes are just meant for like review. So in the 60-minute class, we've covered speaking, listening, and writing, as well as reading, right? So 4 major points of learning any language. And in those last 5 minutes, we just discuss, what did you find surprising? What did you learn? Do you feel like you enjoyed this class? And if it's a single student that I'm with, I would say, when are we meeting again? Because usually my single students are on a fluctuating schedule. If it's a group class, I tell them goodbye, thank you for coming, have a nice weekend, have a nice day, afternoon, etc., and then log out. So that's how my classes are conducted. I really enjoy doing conversation classes. If you're looking for personal English classes, if you're watching this as an ESL learner, come to me. I love it. I'll help you out, and I don't charge much. Don't worry. I'm not here to get rich as an English teacher. I'm just trying to help bring the world together. And yeah. That's it. That's how we conduct a conversation English class. So thanks for watching. My name is Simon Hill. If you're an ESL teacher and you're looking for, help getting into this business, contact me as well. If you are let's say, an ESL teacher already and you want these documents, hey, hit me up. I don't mind sharing the knowledge. By the way, if you don't have these documents and you're watching this video and I don't get in contact with you, you could easily put together something like this. Pick a topic, right? Any topic, coffee, right? Create like 3 or 4 discussion questions to begin with. Pick 10 or 15 random vocabulary words, right, that you think your students might not know. Find a text about coffee, a short text, maybe 300, 400 words. Create some comprehension questions about it. Create some sentences for those vocabulary words that you had had before, and then create a writing section, and you have the same sort of lesson, right? This same lesson can be replicated. You don't need these actual sheets. You could do this yourself, right? I've been thinking about creating my own actual sheets to do this sort of work. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you for watching. I hope this advice was helpful for any ESL learners, students, teachers, etc. My name is Simon Hill. Hit the like button, subscribe. Peace.